We're joined now by the Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, who joins us live on the programme. Good morning, Mr Gove. Good to talk to you. We've spoken to Ed Davey from the Liberal Democrats and also to the Labour Party this morning, and both of them seem to be saying it was such a thin Queen's speech, with the words from the Labour Party, at a time of such a deep financial crisis. Why wasn't there more to help those who are struggling at the moment in yesterday's announcements?
Well, yesterday's Queen's speech contained quite a lot of measures which are there to ensure that the economy becomes stronger overall. By its very nature, Queen's speeches contain legislation, bills that take some time to debate and then to pass into law. So it's about the long term. There are lots of other things that the government has already done and will be doing as well, which are designed explicitly to provide support to people who are facing difficult challenges at this time because of inflation.
You say difficult challenges. There's a new report that says that 1.5 million households face food and energy bills that are greater than their disposable income. And unless the government does more to help, the report says a further 250,000 will slide into destitution. Do you think that you and do the government appreciate the depth of despair that some people are financially in at the moment?
Yes.
And what are you going to do to help those people who are watching this morning and have listened to the Liberal Democrats and listened to the Labour Party saying that more people need more direct, immediate help right now from the government?
Yes. I didn't hear what my friends from the other two political parties have said. I haven't heard any particularly good concrete ideas from them yet, but, let's wait and see. But what we have done is that we have already taken steps in order to ensure that we help with energy bills, that we reduce council tax bills for the very poorest, that we have money given to local government, to local authorities, to help those in greatest need. And last night, the Prime Minister convened a meeting of ministers with responsibility for different policy areas. We were all continuing to look at everything that we can do in order to help. And indeed, in the Queen's speech yesterday, one of the measures that my department was bringing forward was support for people who are currently renting in order to try to ensure that we can minimise rent increases.
Can you give us a bit more detail on that? So this was the Cost of Living Cabinet Committee last night, is that right, the one you're referring to?
Yes, absolutely. And across the board, my colleagues from the Department for Education, the Department for Transport, my own team who've been looking at housing, and others were sharing ideas with the Prime Minister about ways in which we can go further to help.
Can you share some of those ideas with us this morning?
Well, on the whole, it's never, I've found, a good idea to run straight from a Cabinet Committee, even to the BBC, and to say, well, we're thinking about this idea and we're developing it. I think the right thing to do is for us to make sure that each of those individual policy areas is given the scrutiny it deserves. But every day in government, we are thinking hard about what more we can do to help. Sometimes it will be developing the long-term policies. And yesterday in the Queen's speech, we outlined, for example, things that we can do to help to ensure that the food and farming sector is more productive in the future, that we can both grow more of our own food and at the same time keep the cost down in the long term. A government has to think about the future in that way, as well as dealing with the pressures, the inevitable and painful pressures that people feel now.
OK, with the greatest respect, though, you've just criticised the Labour and the Liberal Democrats for not coming up with concrete ideas. You're saying that you as a government are discussing ideas. I've asked you for a bit more detail this morning. For the many people who are watching this programme and thinking, I need help, I think it's probably OK for me to ask you again to flesh out some of those ideas, which are potentially things that the government might do to help people this morning.
Well, we've already taken steps. It was the government that decided that it would be appropriate, and I think it was absolutely right, to reduce council tax payments for people in bands A to D, to target help on those who are poorest. We have the Household Support Fund, which has made money available in order to help those in the toughest circumstances. And my own department has put money in to a particular fund to help those people who may have accumulated arrears in rent. These are all things that the government has already done, along with a packed legislative agenda. And again, I don't want to criticise the guys from the Liberal Democrats and the spokesperson from Labour. I'm just saying that if they had a whiz-bang idea that hadn't occurred to anyone else, then I haven't heard it yet. Do share it on the programme. Always happy to debate.
Well, I'll throw one. I'm not saying it's a whiz-bang idea, but one of the things that they've been talking about is a windfall tax on these huge profits of some of the energy companies, because that is somewhere which is hitting everybody watching this morning quite significantly in the pocket. Is that something, potential measures in that area that was discussed last night?
No.
Why not?
Because, as both the Chancellor and the Energy Secretary have explained in the past, if you have the wrong sort of tax applied to energy companies in the wrong way and at the wrong time, you deter the investment that we need in order to ensure that we have security of supply in the future. If you look at the energy sector overall, particularly if you look at oil and gas, particularly if you look at investment in somewhere like Aberdeen, my hometown, then you have to take a long-term view, because one of the reasons we're in difficulty now is that previous Labour governments didn't take a long-term view of energy. They didn't, for example, put the investment into nuclear that we need and that the Prime Minister has now led. So, no, not the right tax, not levied in the right way, not at the right time.
But we specifically heard from BP last week that they would continue investment whatever happens.
Well, I know, because I was in Aberdeen just the other week, that the overall oil and gas sector requires a level of certainty over the economic picture if we're going to see the investment that we need, both to ensure security of supply now and to move towards net zero in the future. So again, you have to look at the sector in the round, and you need to look at all of the factors which encourage a level of investment. But of course, we're not afraid to take on any vested interest that requires to be taken on in order to help consumers and citizens. So we, as a government, said to builders who'd done quite well out of government subsidy, look, you need now to contribute to resolving the building safety crisis. And so we secured billions of pounds from those companies in order to ensure that people who were in unsafe buildings and who were going to have to face the cost themselves had that pressure relieved, and the big companies paid up. Now, we as a government did that because we are on the side of people who are facing tough times, and we will take necessary and proportionate action when required. But we also recognise that when you're dealing with businesses, you need to have a care to ensure that those businesses can remain sustainable. They've got employees, they pay taxes. We need to make sure that we don't unbalance the economy. And that's the approach that we've taken.
OK, I want to ask you a question about Northern Ireland, but just one more on what we heard yesterday, because the Prime Minister appeared to suggest there would be more help with cost of living in the coming days. And then that point was put to the Treasury, who said that no big announcement was imminent. Ed Davey said this morning that just shows you that government are chaotic and don't have a plan. What's the truth of that?
Well, the truth is that Ed Davey is chaotic, and he doesn't have a Scooby.
What was the Prime Minister saying yesterday, which was then sort of poo-pooed by the Treasury?
It wasn't. The Prime Minister was making the point clearly. We just had a Cabinet Committee meeting to discuss it, that we are constantly looking at ideas in order to ensure that we relieve the pressure on people who are facing incredibly tough times. But that doesn't amount to an emergency budget, which is what some people immediately thought that it did. It is an example of some commentators chasing their own tails and trying to take a statement that is commonsensical, turning it into a major capital letters, a big news story. And in fact, when the Treasury quite rightly say, calm down, then people, instead of recognising that they've overinflated the story in the first place, then say, oh, this is clearly a split. And someone like Ed Davey, I know, I worked with Ed in the past, I recognise his talent for this sort of thing, immediately steps into this media whirlpool and attempts to stir it even further. The truth is, Prime Minister says government is working hard, and the Treasury say, yes, we are, and I'm afraid the budget is going to be when we said it would be, i.e., please get things in proportion. That becomes a story? Well,
Well, with the greatest respect, I think the Prime Minister was talking about something in the coming days, and the question was, what's that going to be? Is that potentially an emergency budget? And the Treasury said no. I'm not sure that's spinning a story. That's the Prime Minister saying something, a follow-up question to the Treasury to ask what those plans might be, and them saying, no, there aren't any plans for an emergency budget.
Yeah, exactly. No big deal.
But at a time when people are struggling financially to put food on the table and making those choices between heating and eating, when you hear the Prime Minister saying there's some help coming in the next few days, surely you ask a question about that and you try and discover what those measures are going to be. That's the point of being a journalist, isn't it?
You, of course, ask questions, but it's not a story that the Prime Minister said that the government is looking to see what we can do. And the Treasury said, yeah, of course we're looking, but that doesn't mean an emergency budget. That is a helpful clarification, which means that we can then get on with asking and indeed investigating serious ways in which we can help those most in need. And as I mentioned earlier, in the Queen's speech, we have measures to help those in the socially rented sector in order to provide them with the security they need and the voice that they need in order to ensure that their position is valued. We also have measures to help those people who are in the private rented sector in order to ensure that they are not subject to arbitrary no-fault evictions. Those are both measures that are helping people who are facing all sorts of pressures at the moment. Is there more that we can do? Of course there is, and we always keep under review the range of tools that we have. That is the work of government. That's what I think people would expect us to do.
OK, Mr Gove, I know you're short of time and you've got to go, but I've got to ask you about the Northern Ireland Protocol. Is the plan to rip it up? What are you going to do?
No, we're going to negotiate with the EU in order to get the best possible outcome for the people of Northern Ireland, but no option is off the table. Liz Truss will be meeting Maroš Šefčovič, the European Commission Vice President, tomorrow. They have a good relationship. They will try to make progress tomorrow. I'm sure that both of them are, in fact, I know that both of them are fully committed to making sure that we resolve some of the very difficult issues that have arisen. But you would expect a UK government to, when it's thinking about the security of the entire United Kingdom, to say that there is no option that is off the table, and that's absolutely right.
Appreciate your time, Mr Gove. Thank you very much for talking to us.